Between the years 1968 and 1971, Mitchell Radow, a Brooklyn native, spent much of the free time of his early 20s catching concerts in the city, primarily at the Fillmore East in the East Village of Manhattan. During that time, he saw some of the most amazing and iconic acts, witnessing performances from Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Santana, Jefferson Airplane, B.B. King, and The Doors, just to name a few. But the concert that stood out most to him was when he went to see the legendary jam band, the Grateful Dead. The enthusiasm from the crowd blew him away, and he found the extensive length of the jam band set mesmerizing. He thinks they must have played until the early morning because when he left, it was light outside. For Mitchell, though, the music was merely a supporting act for a moment that would serve as a core memory and a significant moment on his life's timeline. It's important to understand that for most of his life, Mitchell was incredibly shy, struggled socially, and thus felt lonely. So it was a big deal for him that at this Grateful Dead concert, he went over to the pretty girl he saw out of the corner of his eye. If this was before 1968, before he exited his slumber, as he put it, he wouldn't have even considered approaching the girl. However, the energy of the concert and his newfound confidence enabled him to walk over and ask the girl to dance. They went on to dance for 30 minutes, and perhaps the beautiful music, the energetic dancing, and the interpersonal connection all worked together to give him a personal triumph. It should have been no surprise that music served as the catalyst for this important moment. Music had always been a constant source of fascination for him. In the early fall of 1965, 16-year-old Mitchell sat in his dorm room at Queens College. He was reading the music letter from a guy at his university named Barney, who he described as half crazy. He was particularly invested in this edition of Barney's newsletter because he was detailing a story of Mitchell's favorite artist, Bob Dylan. Dylan, in the early 60s, had carved out a name for himself in the ethos of the baby boomer generation with his acoustic guitar and poignant lyrics. However, as Barney detailed, in the summer of 1965, Dylan shocked the world while playing at the Newport Folk Festival in Newport, Rhode Island. The young singer-songwriter walked onto the stage with an electric guitar, blasphemy for many, as the image of Bob Dylan and the acoustic guitar had to be inseparable. So inevitably, there was an incredible backlash, with many in the audience booing. The booing continued for Dylan during his subsequent performances, and even at one performance in England, someone from the audience called him Judas. For Mitchell, though, he didn't reserve any judgment for Bob Dylan's guitar choice. He just felt like Dylan was a creative kid trying new things. But what captivated him about the story was the sheer magnitude of the incident. For Mitchell, he was perplexed that just one small move somehow led to one giant backlash. That all said, Dylan going electric wouldn't have mattered to Mitchell at all if it hadn't been for a New York Met game a couple years prior. In 1963, the New York Mets were in just their second season, and well, weren't very good. Heck, they didn't even have their own stadium. They were still playing at the Polo Grounds in Harlem, which had housed the New York Giants for 66 years before they betrayed their city and moved to San Francisco. But Mitchell, the diehard baseball fan that he was, stuck true to the anti-New York Yankees sentiment he developed growing up in Brooklyn as a Dodger fan before they too betrayed their community and moved to California. So in the summer of that year, he caught a train to Harlem to watch the Mets in the infancy of their history. After the game, he headed to Brooklyn. When he got off the train, he was pleasantly surprised to see his friend's sister. She was blasting music on her transistor radio. The song playing was Talkin' New York by none other than Bob Dylan. This was the first time that Mitchell heard Dylan. He instantly fell in love with the music, with Dylan's subtle sense of humor and his social criticisms. He then explored more of his music and he quickly became his favorite artist. He felt that Dylan became the voice of his generation and did it in a way that avoided dogma or radicalism. There was a debate among Mitchell's peers at school regarding the greatness of Bob Dylan. Some thought he was a deity, others felt he was a great philosopher, but Mitchell simply saw him as a confused kid that served as a window into his generation. Now I guess it's time for me to reveal that Mitchell Radow is in fact my eldest maternal uncle. For my siblings, cousins, and I growing up, he truly encompassed the term funkle. But as I got older, I loved talking about music with him, because the artists that captivated him in his youth are some of those that got passed down to my generation and are seen by us through an iconic lens, and therefore, for many of us, still find their way into our daily mixes. When talking to my uncle about the first time he heard Bob Dylan, I was struck by how vividly he remembered the details of where he was, how he heard it, and what he felt. That experience certainly qualifies as a quote-unquote, where were you moment. I'm Dov Brenner, and this is Hot Cakes from a 90s Stand. In just a moment, I'll have my guest on to discuss what are the top 5 where were you music moments for us 90s kids. But real quick, I just want to encourage you all to check out Hot Cakes from a 90s Stand on Instagram and Facebook. Also, another shameless plug, I know Ryan and I have talked about our band Separate Checks quite a few times. Well, we finally have our first single coming out July 11th, so make sure you head to Spotify to check out Timeline by Separate Checks on that date. Anyways, now that I got that out of the way, enjoy the rest of the episode. Since the last time our guest today was on the podcast, she moved to the Florida Panhandle. As I mentioned during her first appearance, she is that friend that calls me out on my bullshit, so I am long overdue for my ego to be checked. I'm not sure what she's been up to recently other than kicking my ass in Spottle. Please welcome back to Hot Cakes from a 90s Stand, Miss Ella Hyder.
Hey, Dove.
Hello, how's it going? How you been?
I've been good. I've been playing a lot of Spottle. That was a great shout.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you encouraging me to get started.
Fun.
It really is fun. So I showed it to Castillo, and he was not impressed.
Excuse me.
I thought he would be so into it, and he was just like, and I was like playing it, and he's like, Dove, I want to like talk to you about whatever, like random whatever, but like he was not into Spottle. I was very disappointed.
Okay, well, sorry, it's not Blue Man Group.
That's a shout out. That's the kind of shout out he's going to get on this podcast. So
that made me laugh so much. Him talking about Blue Man Group, like they are very cool and a very like different vibe, but that was just like the funniest. How in love he was with them as a child is such a funny idea to me.
Yeah, and because I saw them and I was like, oh, they were cool, but like I feel like there were more significant things that I remember from my childhood in terms of like entertainment.
Yeah. I texted my sister and I was like, you have to listen to this part of this podcast. It's so funny because he's talking about like magicians and like these like world-class shows in Las Vegas and being like, I mean, it's cool, but it's no Blue Man Group. That's the best. Like, I just loved it so much.
Yeah. Fuck you, Celine Dion.
Yeah, fuck you. Fuck you, Adele. Have you seen Blue Man Group?
Yeah. So how is living in Pensacola? How's that going?
It's great. We are about 15 minutes from the beach. I'm in Nick's office right now. It looks like I'm being held hostage, but that's just because there's like nothing on, it's just a plain white wall behind me. And I was like, Nick,
Isn't that just marriage in general?
yes, yeah. Nick described it as mutual Stockholm syndrome the other day.
So hopefully we get Nick on the podcast one day because he doesn't speak a whole lot, but when he does, 9 times out of 10, it's funny.
It's always, yeah. Yeah, it's my favorite. We had some friends over last night just for like a little game night. And when Nick gets drunk, he like makes jokes that he like normally would keep to himself. And it's the best because he's like, it's like the best, like stupidest ones. He just had us all dying last night. So funny.
Yeah, but yeah, tell Nick I gotta get him on. He's got to choose an artist or a genre or something. We'll get him on.
There's a gazillion. He really loves Eminem. So 90s Eminem would definitely be his vibe.
Because I feel like we've talked about that before, and I definitely, I was going to say like, we want to focus on the 90s, but everything we're going to be talking about today is in the
later.
2000s. So whatever. It's a name. The podcast, it's a name,
Listen, fair enough.
But before we get into it, I gotta ask, how is Waylon doing? Now, for people at home, Ella's dog is named Waylon after Waylon Jennings, and it makes my heart so warm anytime that I say his name. So how is Mr. Waylon doing?
He is great. It's so funny. We get like 2 very different groups of people that like love his name. We'll tell them like we'll take him to the dog park and we'll tell people like, oh yeah, his name's Waylon after Waylon Jennings or whatever. And there's the young like hipster crowd that's like, oh, that's so cool, or whatever. And then there's like old white people that are like, oh, nice, that's a great name. It's just like two very distinct groups that are like really into it. But he's doing great. We actually took him to the beach with us last week. So like I said, we got our floors redone, and you have to like completely move out of your house and then move back in when you get them done. And so we stayed out at the beach for a week, and we took him out to the water, and he's normally terrified of water. It's the funniest thing in the world. He's 101 pounds as of a couple weeks ago, and he is just terrified. He's like, this thing is moving at me. I do not want to be around it. And he finally got in and like was swimming around. I have bruises all over me because he would swim directly to me and then like clamp on for dear life. But it was the cutest thing in the world. So he's thriving.
Oh
But
yeah.
thank you for asking. How's Josie?
Josie's great. She's the same as you remember her, just super friendly, super sweet, wants to be friends with everybody.
Of course.
But anytime like a 2 pound foo-foo dog barks at her, she gets very upset. I have to console her. But but yeah. Anyway, so let's get into it. And before I like go into, each individual where were you moment, I would like you to tell me your interpretation. Now, I know it seems like pretty self-explanatory, but what do you think? Like, how would you describe a quote unquote where were you moment?
Well, okay, so it's funny you asked that because I pretty much historically have a terrible memory for pretty much anything. So like the only really like where were you moments that I really remember, like when people die, pretty much like when celebrities die, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember where I was when that happened. But like a lot of these moments that we're going to talk about are these events, like I don't remember where I was like when it happened, but I remember either reading about it the next day or like just like the impact that it had or seeing it everywhere, just kind of like either the buildup or the aftermath. I kind of remember like those segments of it, and then I can kind of contextualize it within like where I was or what age I would have been. But I for as far as like where were you when this happened, it's more of like a what do you remember about this happening, if that makes any sense.
Right, right. So it's like, what was going on in your life? How did it relate to your life? When there's some kind of like impactful, cultural event, whether it's like a death or like a band breaking up or something.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, we got that out of the way, just in case people like didn't know what a where were you moment was. We got that out of the way. So we'll start. We'll get started. And like I told you earlier, I'm going to just kind of talk about an event, kind of give the history of it, the significance, all of that, and then we'll talk about it. We'll
Yeah.
do five where were you moments, and I did do a countdown, but it is somewhat arbitrary, except for number one, and you'll see why. And
Okay.
so, anyways, so number five, Lady Gaga bursts onto the scene. So Lady Gaga was born in March of 1986 in Manhattan as Stefani Joanne Angelina Germanotta. I probably pronounced that wrong. She started playing piano at the age of 4. At the age of 11, she began attending an all-girls Catholic school. Oh, that's like you almost.
Yeah, pretty
Uh,
much.
she wrote her first piano ballad at the age of 13, and at 14, she performed at her first NYC nightclub.
Wild. She's got the
Uh,
craziest life.
Oh yeah. At the age of 17, she was part of a select few students accepted via early admission into the Collaborative Arts Project 21, a part of New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. As the great ones do, she dropped out of the school because she felt it would be more efficient for her to pursue her music career on her own. Reflecting on leaving college, she said, quote, "I loved NYU, but I thought I could teach myself about art better than the school could." To make ends meet in New York, she worked three jobs, including one as a go-go dancer. In 2005, Germanotta was signed by Def Jam Records, but dropped only a few months later. In 2006, Melly Mel, better known for his work as the lead vocalist for the iconic hip-hop group Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, heard Germanotta perform at the legendary New York rock club called The Bitter End. He was blown away and recruited her to sing 2 songs on his inspirational kids audiobook. In 2007, Germanota started a gig as a songwriter for Interscope Records, writing for Britney Spears, New Kids on the Block, and the Pussycat Dolls. That year, while performing at a burlesque show, the famous R&B singer Akon heard her perform and was impressed enough to sign her. Subsequently, she signed a joint deal with Con Live Distribution and Interscope Records. At some point in the aughts, Germanota started going by her stage name Lady Gaga. There is a bit of controversy surrounding the origin of the stage name, which even included a $35 million lawsuit. However, it's widely believed that the name is a reference to the song Radio Gaga by the band Queen, released in 1984. Her debut album, The Fame, was the child of over 2 years of writing and recording. A product of her evolving public persona, the album discusses her fascinations with fame and the concept of pop culture as art. She later explained, quote, "The Fame is about how anyone can feel famous. Pop culture is art. It doesn't make you cool to hate pop culture, so I embraced it and you hear it all over The Fame. But it's a shareable fame. I want to invite you all to the party. I want you to feel a part of this lifestyle." The Fame, which sounds somewhere between Queen, David Bowie, and Madonna, was released on August 19th, 2008 in Canada and on October 28th, 2008 in the US. While the album initially didn't experience groundbreaking success, debuting at number 17 on the Billboard Hot 200, she started gaining pop star level success in early 2009 when her debut single Just Dance, featuring Akon and Colby Adonis, peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. But that status of pop star transitioned to unabashed cultural phenomenon in the late winter of 2009 when the Fame's second single, Poker Face, hit the airwaves, leaving pop music forever changed. The dark 80s-esque synth-pop tune with contemporary production quality peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and currently has over 1.2 billion streams on Spotify, and its music video sits at over 1.3 billion views. The song is the third highest selling from a female artist, with over 14 million singles sold or digitally purchased. The song was the world's most downloaded song in 2009. Since Poker Face, Lady Gaga has had 15 top 10 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. 3 of those became number 1 hits. One of those was Shallow, featured in the 2018 version of A Star is Born, in which Lady Gaga starred and was nominated for Best Actress in the 3 major movie award ceremonies, the Academy, Golden Globe, and Screen Actor Guild Awards. Finally, 6 of her songs have more than 1 billion plays on Spotify. All of this is to say that she is a bona fide star in every sense of the word. So that is my spiel about the number 5 Where Were You moment, basically, giving you the background for, when Lady Gaga kind of surfaced, I would say, with Poker Face, because Just Dance kind of, I think, set the groundwork and then kind of exploded with Poker Face. But Ella, did I leave anything out?
Well, I found out, I need to get fact check on this because I'm not absolutely positive, but I'm pretty sure she got accepted into Juilliard when she was like 11, but she didn't go, and she ended up going to that Catholic school instead, which is insane.
That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, right.
But in hindsight, maybe probably was the right choice, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a very young age to be going to like a school that's going to be that demanding.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, art schools, I always kind of feel like you never know, like, especially with something like Juilliard, like it's so classical, you just never know if it's gonna like beat the creativity out of someone or if it's going to like, help them flourish even more. I think it really depends on the person.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're 11, you can definitely like have that personal artistry removed by like whatever the expectations are from, your different teachers and such, or even your
Yeah.
peers as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that sounded like a pretty thorough. Always forget that Akon was like the usher to her Justin Bieber, which is so funny. I just don't think of Akon as that role ever. Like he to me, he's like just like, DJ Khaled, like beginning of a song, like signature on the beginning of the song. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like it was like on Just Dance, right? He's at the beginning, and then you never hear him with Lady Gaga again, I think.
Is he even on Just Dance? Like, is he
So
in the beginning of that song?
he is in the beginning of that song. And I think he's featured a little bit on it. Like he has maybe like lines here and there, but it's more like DJ Khaled.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's so
Um,
funny.
but so where were you? Set the frame for me. Where were you when you heard Poker Face for the first time?
Um, so this is one of the ones that I'm like, I don't know the very first time I could not tell you, but I do think it's very much has like a like middle school dance nostalgia for me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I definitely remember hearing, which is so funny because I just watched an interview with her like not too long ago saying that Kiss FM was like the only station that properly censored Poker Face. Because have you seen this where she says like that she's actually like in the poker face, poker face, she's actually saying fuck her face. Can I cuss? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely,
Okay, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like actually saying like which Kiss FM was like absolutely not, like we have to censor this. And so she had to go back and re-record, or she did some kind of like censorship or whatever. But yeah, that was like the only station that ever was like gave her any pushback about it. And she was like, and they were absolutely right. That's what I was saying.
That's hilarious. Because I heard that like I heard that it was, I don't want to say inflammatory, but using vulgarity, but like I heard it was she was saying butt fucker face, butt fucker face. That's what I heard that it was. But
Oh my gosh, is that what it is?
I don't know. That was what the kids were saying back in the at the time. But and
That's really
so
funny.
that's stuck with me. And every time I hear that, that's what I think. Like when
Yeah.
I'm like, um, but so I think for me, I'm trying to remember exactly. Like I have a memory of being my because this came out I think my sophomore year of high school, and I had a neighbor who was in my class, and then her older sister like had her license, was 2 years older, and she was a senior, we were a sophomore, and she would drive us every day, and she like listened to top 40 like exclusively, like nothing other than top 40. And I just remember, like, for the most part, I hate, like I'm pretentious now. I was really pretentious back then with music. So I like
We
hated
all
every
were.
moment. Yeah. But then, like, then we're like, she's driving us home from school. And then I hear Poker Face and I'm like, huh, interesting. This is a very good song. So
Yeah, but it's top 40, so you gotta hate it, right? So it's
that's what I said. I hated it.
yeah.
Like I told, but like internally, I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, yeah. Don't tell anyone I like this, but it's
Yeah.
actually really cool.
Yeah. It was like my id saying to my super ego, "Don't tell anyone. Don't
Yeah.
do it."
Yeah. Yeah, I get that for sure.
Yeah. Uh,
This is off topic, but I had a kid tell me who I drove to school that he can't listen to Dave Matthews Band because we listened to the same Dave Matthews CD for like 2 months straight. He told me years later that he never could listen to Dave Matthews Band again.
oh, to be fair, like I feel like Dave Matthews gets a lot of hate,
He
and
does.
I think most of it is unfounded. Although that
I agree.
the one story about like on the bridge dumping out the waste, that was pretty bad.
No, I think I would support him doing that again. I think that was the funniest thing that's ever happened.
No, like I would be like if that was me and I got a bunch of like shit like dropped on me while I'm on a boat, I'd be like, what the fuck? And then I found it was Dave Matthews. I'd be like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's not so bad.
Could probably sell it on eBay if you wanted. Like his is probably mixed in there.
um, but anyway, so that's a shout out to Dave Matthews.
Yeah.
Free Dave Matthews.
Yeah.
Uh, but are you would you consider yourself a big Gaga fan?
I am not like, I mean, I'm not super into like big diva music. Like that's just not really my vibe. Like the, Sam Smith, Adam Lambert, Lady Gaga, all kind of in the same category to me. That's not what I am drawn to, but I think she's just incredible. Do you watch her documentary?
No, I didn't.
Oh my God. She's just
What's
like a rock star. She's just
yeah.
like, I mean, and a rock star, that's the wrong word. She's like, because a rock star, I'm thinking like Mick Jagger just kind of shows up and does what he does and then goes home. Like this woman is working. And she actually, I just watched an interview with her recently, where she's talking about being compared to Madonna, and she just shuts that shit down. She's like, because like Madonna's obviously amazing and she's been around forever and she's, a very talented artist, but she's like, I have the utmost respect for Lady Gaga just because she hustles. Like she's always working. She's like doesn't give herself like she just holds herself to a really high standard in her work and her everything that she does. She wants it to be perfect and she wants to like put out the best art she can and be as true to herself as she can. And she just like she doesn't want to be compared to anybody anymore, which is like, go off, girl, do your thing. But yeah, I'm not like her biggest like musical fan, but I am just like a fan of her and her work ethic and everything that she stands for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so in preparation for this episode, I finally saw A Star Is Born.
Ooh.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it. I know how it ends and everything, and I just was like, that is such a bummer.
Strong, highly recommend. No, the ending was traumatic and I'm not happy about it.
Yep.
And but Bradley Cooper is super talented. I didn't know, like I knew that. I was like, first of all, it's cool that, oh wow, he's singing, play guitar. Wow, how impressive. But he also directed it too. I was like, whoa.
Oh, that's
Wow.
cool.
But yeah, she does an incredible job in that movie. And I just think, like for me, I just think that she is the chops that she has. And no disrespect to Madonna, but her chops, like her, it was kind of like when we're going to talk about Britney in a minute, but like Britney versus Christina, they were already always compared and they were both talented, but
Hmm.
Christina vocally was just on like another echelon. And I
Different
kind of feel
level.
like, yeah, I feel like that's like Gaga versus Madonna, but I do see like they, how they are like comparable.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I feel like anytime there's like mega pop star that's a little avant-garde, you're gonna get like a comparison to Madonna, a comparison to Cher, a comparison to now Lady Gaga. Like with Chapel Roan, I don't know if you've been listening to her at all. She's amazing. I'm obsessed. I can't stop.
You're the second person who's told me about her in like the last week, so I feel like I have to check her out.
Dude, you've heard her stuff already. Like it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. But she has kind of the same like maybe not the same stage presence because I don't think she's as much of a dancer, but she has the same like costuming and like the same like kind of avant-garde vibe. And so of course she's going to immediately get compared to Lady Gaga. She's going to get compared to Madonna and all those, I mean, flattering comparisons. But yeah, I feel like once you get any new pop star with any kind of like vibe like that, people are immediately like, "Ooh, she's like X. She's like, whoever else."
Definitely. Um, and I'm pretty sure that you kind of answered this question previously. But I'll just ask you, and maybe there's anything that you want to add that could really like fully answer this question. But why do you think she's been such a transcendent figure?
Well, I think the biggest thing was like I feel like I don't want to say this in a way that makes it sound like it was like a ploy, but I feel like her kind of marketing or like appealing more to like LGBTQ youth, like that was like such a huge thing that wasn't really being done. I kind of looked at the like who else was like what other big stars were kind of out and about at the time, like that were putting out this like same level of music as Lady Gaga, and none of them were really having that same like accept yourself. Like nobody else had that message coming out. And so I think that part of it made it so that she had like this whole just different realm of fan base, if that makes sense. And it was like a place where she was preaching something different than what, say, Katy Perry was putting out, which I mean, that's a little bit later, but like that whole like Pussycat Dolls and Black Eyed Peas and stuff like that, all of that was coming out. And then you have Lady Gaga coming out and being like, I'm gonna wear these big ass eyelashes. I'm gonna wear this platinum blonde wig. I'm gonna wear a meat dress, like just being absolutely outrageous. And leaning into it and telling everybody else like, and you can do that too if you want, and that's your choice, is like, I think that was what kind of made her an icon so quickly.
Yeah, and I think that there was some like major publication that put Born This Way as like the number one LGBT anthem of all time. And
That
that
makes
makes sense
sense.
because she was, I mean, she was outspoken about LGBT rights before it became into like the zeitgeist about like the acceptance of the LGBTQ community in general. Because I remember that really the tide really started shifting. We're getting a little bit of history and like but like in 2011 when it became legal in the state of New York, I feel like that's kind of when the dominoes started falling. But
Hmm.
like Lady Gaga was out there 2009, 2010 yelling at Obama to get legislation passed. So
Yeah,
she
for sure. Yeah, and like she would make statements at awards shows, she would make statements at her own shows, like she was out there, like you said before, it was kind of like all of Hollywood was just kind of, nowadays it's like you're just, if you're a leftist at all in Hollywood, you accept that. Like
Mhm.
that's everywhere, that's kind of just common knowledge. Like, yeah, we're all cool with that now. But that was way before that. I mean, I'm not to, obviously I love her, but not Taylor Swift didn't even like come out in support of gay rights until like 2018 or something. So it was way before pop stars were
Yeah.
coming out and being like, you know what, actually, this is fine.
Yeah. And I think yeah, that's probably another reason why people like just love Lady Gaga. She pushed the envelope, and she also has that just like carefree sense, like what she doesn't really give a fuck. It's like she's gonna say what she has to say, and I think people and do it in like a very way that's sonically pleasing, and I think obviously
Yeah,
people
yeah.
appreciated that.
Yes, it
Um,
helps that she's like a mega talented songwriter.
yeah. So we're gonna move on to number 4, which is Britney Spears shaves head. In January of 1999, 17-year-old Britney Spears released her debut album, Baby One More Time. The album was led by the title track that peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks. The album itself peaked at number 1 and to date has sold over 25 million copies, making it the best-selling album ever released by a teenager. Over the next 4 years, she released 3 studio albums, all of which debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 200 and have collectively sold over 35 million copies worldwide. She also enjoyed 11 top 40 pop hits in the US. Following the success of her 2003 album In the Zone, which featured perhaps her signature song Toxic, Spears faced quite a bit of tumult. In early January of 2004, Spears ignited controversy when she eloped with her childhood friend, Jason Allen Alexander, not to be confused with George Costanza. Both parties almost instantly regretted the marriage, and Spears petitioned for an annulment, which a judge granted swiftly. The marriage lasted 55 hours. Then, in June of that year, Spears had to cancel the remainder of her highly successful tour in support of In the Zone after she injured her knee during the filming of the music video for the single Outrageous. The next string of events led to intense media scrutiny of her life and a heavy presence of paparazzi. In the summer of 2004, Spears became engaged to her backup dancer, Kevin Federline. Controversy was baked into the relationship as Federline had just separated from his partner, the actress Shar Jackson, who was pregnant at the time with their second child. Federline and Spears had a surprise wedding in September of 2004, and they starred in a 5-episode reality show documenting their marriage called Britney and Kevin Chaotic. Within the next 2 years, the couple had 2 kids. In February of 2006, tabloids released photos of Britney driving with her first child on her lap rather than in a car seat. The poor optics were exacerbated by the image of her holding her child with one hand and the steering wheel with the other. Spears claimed that her mistake was due to an unpleasant encounter with paparazzi. In November of 2006, Spears filed for divorce from Federline, citing irreconcilable differences. The separation led to a custody battle over their 2 kids, with both parties seeking full custody. At this point, basically everything Britney did in her private life was caught on camera by an obviously unsolicited paparazzi. Amidst all this turmoil, in February of 2007, Spears went to rehab after her friends and family, concerned with her drinking, urged her to. She spent less than 24 hours there. The following day, Spears walked into Esther's hair salon in Tarzana, California, and requested to the salon's owner, Esther Tognazzi, that she shave her head. Tognazzi refused. So when the hairstylist was talking to Spears' bodyguard, Spears grabbed the electric razor and shaved it herself. In her 2023 memoir, The Woman in Me, Spears said that shaving her head was meant to be a giant fuck you to the world. Speaking of the gesture, she reflected, quote, "My long hair was a big part of what people liked. I knew that. I knew a lot of guys thought long hair was hot. Shaving my head was a way of saying to the world, fuck you. You want me to be pretty for you? Fuck you. You want me to be good for you? Fuck you. You want me to be your dream girl? Fuck you." Spears also explained that between the recent death of her aunt from ovarian cancer, the custody battle, and the nonstop harassment from the paparazzi, she was stricken with grief and in a bad place mentally. The incident received incredible coverage from the media, especially from the tabloids, and became a major pop culture event. A good thing that came of it, though, albeit from an unlikely source, Scottish late-night talk show host Craig Ferguson used his opening monologue to empathize with Spears' struggles and opened up about his own battle with alcoholism. The video went viral and has probably provided solace to countless people struggling with addiction. I am intentionally going to avoid talking about the conservatorship, since that would require a lot of time to unpack. However, it would not be a hot take to assume that Britney Spears shaving her head played a part in the devastating conservatorship being initiated. While during her years of inner turmoil, her music career was put on the back burner, her 2008 album Circus topped the charts, went platinum in at least half a dozen countries, and featured 3 top 20 singles, including the #1 hit Womanizer. Even after the success of Circus, she has embodied the status of a pop star with 7 top 10 singles. All right, Ella. So same. I'm going to start off all of the Q&A part with the same thing. Is there anything to add? Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, the I know the rehab center she went to was Eric Clapton's, right?
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I'm
Was
pretty
it?
sure it's somewhere in the Caribbean.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, it's the Eric Clapton Crossroads Center.
Because I knew it was in a foreign country, but I had no idea there was an association with Eric Clapton.
Yeah, I didn't know that he had any really, and I didn't realize that there was a Craig Ferguson link too. I love Craig Ferguson.
Oh, hey, have you not seen that monologue?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I bet it's amazing. He's so eloquent.
it puts me like I get in tears every time I see it. It's beautiful. And it's like the way he tells it, it's emotional, it's humorous, it makes really good points. Yeah, it's really good. And it always, whenever something goes on with Britney, it always resurfaces because that whole monologue was spurred on by Britney shaving her head. But
Gosh,
yeah, he's great. I got to watch more of his stuff. So if you have any of Craig Ferguson clips, please send them my
I'll
way.
send him your way again for
Yeah.
sure.
Also, speaking about, let's go back to the Eric Clapton rehab. I love that Eric Clapton always finds his way into our music conversations.
How could he not? He's everywhere.
Yeah. So now the $1 million question: where were you when news of Britney Spears shaving her head surfaced?
So I think I actually do remember seeing this on it was either VH1 or MTV. I remember seeing, but it was one of those things where you're just kind of like, it's so sad because looking back, you're like, God, how did nobody intervene? Not with her shaving her head, like, do you, but with her like that whole situation. I think I remember seeing it on MTV or VH1 and just kind of being like, I mean, I would have been, what year was this? 2007?
2007. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been in seventh grade. So like I think it was one of those things where you just see it and you're like, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense with everything that she's been going through. Because it had been years, kind of like you said, it had been years of like you're seeing like the Kevin Federline stuff. You're seeing her 30-day marriage or whatever, day-long marriage. How long was it?
It's 55 hours.
Insane. Absolutely insane. I mean, I think Kim Kardashian was married for 30 days or something. I'm getting micro marriages mixed up. But micro mutual Stockholm syndrome is what we should actually be saying. Um, but yeah, so it was one of those things where you just kind of see it and you're like, yeah, that was gonna happen. Even at 14 or however old I was, 13, I was like, yep, that was gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think I remember where I was, but I don't remember exactly like how I was being transported because I was on way home from school, and I think I must have been on the bus, and I remember like hearing about it on the radio, and I was like, huh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
But I don't think it really shocked me that much because it had been building for years, her like
Yeah.
inner turmoil. Like I don't remember hearing about that first 55-hour marriage, but like her relationship with Kevin Federline was everywhere, you know.
It was everywhere and it was awful. And their poor kids, like just
Oh
having
my
to
God.
that like and like when she shaved her head, she was starting a custody battle. Like I just can't even, I mean, that and leading up to that, so this was kind of the beginning of like me being really into pop culture and like kind of watching everything. Um, Leading up to that, it's like she was hanging out with Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan. She was getting out of cars without underwear on. Like her vag was just like all over the like pop, like all over the newsstands or whatever. And you're just like, she just kind of like then Paris Hilton went to jail. Lindsay Lohan had like a bunch of drug problems. You're just kind of seeing like her in the mix of in the same conversations as like drugs, alcohol, like all these different like going to clubs, and you're at the same time she's got 2 little kids, and like then she's got Kevin Federline and this divorce and blah blah blah, and it's just like a lot of things were building, and you're like something's got to give.
But yeah, and I remember, do you remember when she performed right after that at the VMAs?
Ooh, I don't know. I have to see what she was wearing.
and it was she was wearing very little clothing, and it was like, and she was clearly lip syncing, and it was like everyone
I
thought,
do
okay,
remember
everyone
this.
thought she is done, and then of course she comes and releases like three platinum albums in a row, and
Yeah, of
she was
course.
on How I Met Your Mother and
Oh my
everything.
God. Do you okay, I read a thing recently because Nick and I just rewatched How I Met Your Mother and I do love that show. She like was forced into doing that by her team. She like did not want to do it at all.
Was it during the conservatorship or was it before?
I think it would have been because the conservatorship started in 2008. It started the next year.
Yeah,
And then that How I Met Your Mother season would have been like what, 2012?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's yes, but she apparently really didn't want to do it. She was like, they told me that it would be good for my image. They told me whatever, blah blah blah. But then they painted it in like in the press as, oh, she's a huge fan of the show. She's wanted to do this forever. But she was like, no disrespect to everybody on the team. It's a great show. They were all really sweet or whatever. But I didn't want to do that at all, and that was something that I was forced to do. And I was like, that
Yeah.
sucks.
That does suck. And I think she's definitely an example of really just the wrong place at the wrong time in terms of just like, she's coming of age. I mean, she was like in her early 20s when all this was going down. And like when that was like I feel like when the paparazzi was at its peak.
Do you
Because
think
like
so? I kind of feel like that same thing would happen today. Because I was thinking, like, I mean, I'm just looking at obviously England's a different, their paparazzi's a different beast, but like, one of the things I was going to talk to you about was like how, like, it's just kind of the same story retold over and over and over every like 20 years of like this I mean, even, I know we're not talking about it, but Amy Winehouse, like, fame was such a huge part of her whole like downward spiral.
but also like Amy Winehouse's like ascent was not too far after, like it kind of overlapped a little bit with Britney Spears.
That's true. But like, what about
Um
Meghan Markle? Like, she's not like that's like the same, like getting harassed by
yeah,
paparazzi. Like, I
yeah.
just think that's like, and okay, not to do this because I always do this, but like, it's women, right? Like, it's not necessarily, do men get harassed at the same rate as as like female artists?
Well,
And
probably because they're the paparazzi are more afraid that they're going to get punched in the face.
that's a good point. I will say though, I mean, shortly after the hair shaving incident, don't we have a pretty iconic image of Britney putting an umbrella through a paparazzi's car window?
I think you are definitely more of the pop culture expert on this, so I don't remember that, but I will take your word for
I
it,
think
and
her
we'll.
head is shaved in the photo. It's like the same, all the same thing. It's pretty insane.
Mhm. Yeah, but I think, but going back to what I was saying earlier, what I don't think it would quite happen, like to the extent that it happened with Britney, is because I think that like we were kind of developing technology rapidly, so the access to these
Yeah.
images were coming rapidly, and we hadn't yet developed like like collective societal shame from like
Yeah.
there was less empathy for the people weren't looking at celebrities as human beings. I mean, they're like a piece of meat.
Yeah.
I
That's a
think
very good point.
yeah. But anyways, so the last question that I have, because you answered number three fully. How would you sum up Britney's presence in 21st century pop culture?
Oh man, it's such a bummer because I feel like she's like you hate it, but you do get like punchliney in a sense, like where like she's obviously the pop star of all pop stars. Like that is Britney Spears is when you talk about pop stars, that's number one. You're not gonna get, I mean, Taylor Swift, again, I love her. She's my queen, but I just think like you're not gonna be able to touch the level of like poppiness of Britney Spears. And she was so of that moment and of that time. And I think that like I think now she's sort of like a cautionary tale almost. Like I'm looking at like Chapel Roan again, and she posted about being bipolar 2 or whatever. And I'm just like, man, if Brittany had been able to had access to the doctors that Chapel has access to, or was able to kind of like advocate for herself a little bit better, like maybe we would be seeing her as more of like Christina Aguilera, like, like a coach on The Voice or something like that, where instead we were witnessing someone with probably pretty severe mental illness or something, um, and just kind of watching it unfold in front of us in the worst way possible. I mean, not the worst way, obviously, because she's still with us, but I would say she's kind of a cautionary tale. I think I mean, obviously she's an amazing musician and performer, and she works her ass off, but I do think that like there's a little bit of like a what if, what if we had treated Britney with more respect and had not tried to take away all of her rights as a,
Yeah.
young 20 something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And super happy that obviously that conservatorship ended. I don't want to talk about it because I don't know like really anything
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
not gonna like, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. But I guess like for me, I agree with you. She definitely is a cautionary tale. I think she definitely has a special place in my heart because when I first started listening to music when I was like 5 or 6 years old, like kind of discovering on my own, like she was one of the first art. She was everywhere.
Yeah.
Like she and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Um, so it's like she kind of has a special place in my heart. And like what brings me solace is the fact that after all this went on, she had like at least Circus was like a huge hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it was also funny. Like I never like I finally watched a video for actually singing because I feel like so often she's lip syncing and like she actually had a really good voice.
Yeah. And she was like an alto forced into a soprano
Yeah,
range, which is so crazy because if you hear her sing in her alto range, I have chills. It's so good.
and I've
Um,
never heard that before. So
I'll send you a clip. But yeah, the forcing her into the soprano is where she kind of gets that like baby voice from.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're gonna move on to the wardrobe malfunction. We're at number three. And So on February 1st, 2004, Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson were both superstars. Justin Timberlake, who had achieved stardom in the late 90s as the face of the boy band NSYNC, was just 15 months removed from the release of his monumentally successful debut solo album, Justified. The album, which went on to sell over 8.5 million copies, spawned four top 40 hits, including two that peaked in the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. Also, he had just come off a successful tour with contemporary pop star Christina Aguilera. The tour grossed over $30 million, making it the fifth most lucrative tour of the year. Janet Jackson, unlike Timberlake, who had just turned 23, was 37 at the time and had already released five number one studio albums, and 26 of her singles had peaked in the top 10. Jackson, who is the youngest of the famed Jackson family, was wrapping up production of her eighth studio album, Demita Joe, which was to be released the following month. Thus, it made perfect sense that these two gigantic stars would share the stage for the 38th Super Bowl halftime show. Also performing was a hodgepodge of who's who of early 2000 stars that included Nelly, Kid Rock, Jessica Simpson, and the now disgraced P. Diddy. While Janet Jackson performed multiple songs through the nearly 12-minute halftime show, the final song was to be sung by Timberlake with Jackson dancing at his side. The song was JT's sexually suggestive pop hit Rock Your Body. Apparently, a last-minute decision was made by Jackson and her publicist for Timberlake to follow the line of the song, quote, "and I'll have you naked by the end of this song," with him ripping off her leather bra and exposing her red bustier in an apparent sexy gesture. The idea, however, was never run by CBS, who were the producers of the show. Additionally, Timberlake only found out the day of and never actually rehearsed the move. At the end of the performance, when Timberlake ripped off Jackson's bra, he accidentally took the red bustier with it, exposing one of her breasts for 9/16 of a second. However, everyone at home realized it was an accident and that people make mistakes and thus went on with their lives. That's a joke, of course. The Federal Communications Commission, known better as simply the FCC, received over 540,000 complaints following the incident dubbed the wardrobe malfunction. The chairman of the FCC referred to it as a, quote, classless, crass, and deplorable stunt. Fun fact, if you look up the word deplorable on dictionary.com, that quote I just read is one of the examples. Anyways, the fallout for Janet Jackson was severe, but not really for Justin Timberlake. Local radio stations refused to play Jackson's previously mentioned eighth album. Lace Moonves, the now disgraced but then CEO of CBS, demanded both Timberlake and Jackson an in-person personal apology. Timberlake acquiesced, but Jackson refused, leading Moonves to disinvite her from the Grammy Awards that were to be aired on CBS 1 week following the halftime show fiasco. The FCC went on to fine CBS and MTV, the producers of the halftime show, $550,000. Moonves took the anger from the fine out on Jackson and her album Demita Joe, released the following month. He ordered VH1 and MTV, both subsidiaries of CBS's parent company Viacom, to refrain from playing anything from that album on their network. He ordered the same for radio stations also owned by Viacom. The results were devastating, as the album became Jackson's first studio album in 20 years to not top the Billboard Albums chart. Additionally, the album sold 60% fewer copies than its predecessor. Furthermore, none of the singles from the album even cracked the top 40. While subsequent albums and singles did fare better, at least in terms of chart positions, her relevance within pop music never returned to where it had been before the wardrobe malfunction. Timberlake never experienced even a fraction of the backlash. His subsequent studio album, released in 2006, Future Sex/Love Sounds, peaked at number 1 and has sold over 9.3 million copies worldwide. All 6 singles from the album peaked in the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100, including 3 number ones. Therefore, the disparity in consequences between Timberlake, a white man, and Jackson, a black woman, led to critics pointing out the presence of sexism and racism involved in the backlash. That all said, in 2018, Lace Moonves resigned from his position at CBS after multiple allegations of sexual assault. And in 2021, Malfunction, the dressing down of Janet Jackson, a New York Times documentary about the incident, entered into the zeitgeist the notion of the unfair treatment that Jackson received. All right, so Ella, did I miss anything?
No, I'm really glad you brought up the unfair treatment side of it, because I feel like a lot of times it's just kind of like, oh yeah, she showed her boob on television on accident, and that was that. And it's like, no, there's a lot of repercussions for her specifically, and none for Justin Timberlake, as per usual with his entire career in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is like this would have been right after he left NSYNC, right? So this is his first
Yes,
album.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And then to tie it in with the Britney thing, like to parallel their lives, it's crazy. Like they're like peak stardom, Hollywood's favorite couple, like the whole world's favorite couple or whatever. And then they break up and she spirals in like, you know, the paparazzi's insane. They're just not leaving her alone. She's not getting the support she needs, whatever. And his stock just skyrockets, you know? And then he exposes a woman's boob on television and gets zero ramifications. I just think what a charmed life this man leaves.
Yeah. And do you think, because like, I'm curious to hear your opinion. Do you think that it was one of those things that neither of them should have gotten blamed? Or do you feel like, well, since Jackson got blamed, Justin Timberlake should have gotten blamed? Or do you think that, oh no, Justin Timberlake should have gotten blamed and Jackson, no blame?
I mean, I don't think anybody should have gotten blamed for anything. I think it's like a stupid, like, you know, nobody gets blamed when somebody's dress falls apart on the red carpet. I mean, maybe an assistant or a stylist or something, but like, it's not, you know, whatever. It's,
yeah.
I think it's also such like peak aughts, like culture and values. Outrage. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought it was like, I remember it happening, and at the time I didn't even like, I didn't even process that I was like seeing a woman's boob. I like didn't even like, I remember we were watching the Super Bowl and I was like, I just remember being like, oh, they ended that weird. And then it cut so quickly that you didn't like, you know, it was gone or whatever. But afterwards, everybody was just outraged and could not believe what they had just seen on TV. And I just remember being like, do you guys even like, did you even process what you were looking at?
Yeah, 9/16 of a second.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, it was great, and I even feel like I remember. We'll talk about it in a second. Like, where were you? But I just remember thinking, like, why are people upset? Like, it was so short, and like, what do you like?
So short.
I don't know. Yeah, and I thought there was like a pretty reasonable explanation. Things happen, you move on. It's like, yeah, I didn't really understand it, but I think that's indicative of our generation, right? It was probably the previous generations, Gen X, baby boomers, that were like probably a little bit more offended. But obviously you were watching it when it happened. Do you remember exactly where you were?
I do, actually. This is so weird. We had a small TV up. So we had the big TV downstairs where my parents were watching the game. And then we had a small TV upstairs where like me and like the children of my parents' friends were all watching the game. And we were all, I mean, it was like the size of my laptop, you know, like one of those little tiny ones that we had in either my room or Mary Grace's room. We were all just kind of sitting around it, watching it, not really watching. And then Justin Timberlake came on and we were like obsessed, you know, because NSYNC was like one of my first concerts. We were big NSYNC people. But yeah, I remember
I'm so jealous. I am so jealous you got to see NSYNC live.
It was amazing. I was in third grade and
Oh my God.
it was raining, so we had to wear ponchos and stuff, but it was so worth it. It was amazing.
And that was probably like they're supporting their last album, so they were playing everything from their discography.
Yeah, I remember what's Dirty Pop?
Yep.
That one was the one I remember seeing that one live and being like, "Oh, this is music." And now I'm like, God, like come on. Like and of course my favorite was Lance Bass, so I was like heartbroken when he came out. I was like,
Yeah,
"Damn it."
he came out like the day before my bar mitzvah. So like everyone was talking about that. I'm like, hey guys, look at me. I'm
No,
reading
look at
Torah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tragic. I was really heartbroken.
Um,
But yeah, but I do remember where I was weirdly.
but so where I'm trying to remember exactly. So okay. So my I'm like the one sports fan of my family. Well, my sister's has gotten into football because she like loves doing the statistics with fantasy football. But at the time, I was kind of
Amazing.
like the only one that watched sports, and they were I don't know what they were like watching upstairs, but I was kind of like hanging out in the basement. This is in New York when we had basements.
Yeah, sure,
And
sure.
we had like a kind of like a bedroom in the basement, and there was
Mhm.
like a tiny TV. And so instead of like going up to like, my parents' room and watching on their big TV, I was like, let me go watch on like this tiny like 13-inch TV. And I was like watching it, and when I same thing, I saw the incident, and I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. And
You're
then
like,
I-
ah, move
and then I
on.
watched I was thinking because the end of the game was really exciting. People forget that. Like
Was it the Giant? Okay, I have not Googled this. I should say that. Was it the Giants playing?
it no, it was the Patriots and the Panthers.
Okay, all right. I for some reason I had in my head, I was like, yeah, it was the Giants Super Bowl, which I don't even know if they've had one of those, but either way. Yeah, I just remember I was just fact checking myself.
Yeah, and well, that was the one where so first off, that was like the first time that I knew to root against the Patriots because it's like, oh, they're from Boston. The Red Sox are from Boston. Boo.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
And then I
Ah,
was
the mind of a child.
yeah. So I was very disappointed. I was when Adam Vinatieri, scored the field goal. But yeah, so wild times for sure. But do you remember people talking about it when it happened? Like, do you remember like specifically being hearing it at school, like amongst your
Yeah, I
parents?
mean, I went to a little Catholic school, so that was like, God forbid all of these children just saw a woman's boob, like, whatever. So my parents are pretty liberal, just and always have been, so they weren't really as like outraged by it. But I do remember some of their friends being really like scandalized and being like, I hope the kids didn't see it, and stuff like that. But I mean, and at school, obviously, it was everywhere. And then on that same little TV. I wasn't allowed to watch MTV, but I could watch MTV on that one because it was upstairs and I was a latchkey kid. So I was just like, go upstairs and turn on channel 54. And MTV that was all they would talk about. Like TRL was just going crazy. Like Carson Daly on TRL, just like talking about Janet Jackson's boob the whole time.
God. Yeah, he was probably like he finally has license to talk about boobs on TV. He's probably very excited.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, he's lit.
Yeah.
He's like, finally.
Dude, Carson Daly, that's a name that I haven't heard in a
I
long
think
time.
it would have been him still. I know they got like some later VJs, but which is the name of that's what those people are called, right?
Yep. Yeah, I
Okay.
think
All
I think
right.
so.
Like, did I just make that up?
No, 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 VJ, that's a real term. I
Okay.
uh I promise.
Okay.
And did you see the documentary that I alluded to? I think came out in
No, I
2021.
never did. I didn't know there was one.
Yeah, it's the New York Times did it. I don't know. I think it might be on Max. I don't know. It's on one of those streaming services. But yeah, just in case you ever want to watch it, it's called Malfunction: The Dressing Down of Janet Jackson.
I would love to watch that. I feel like that Janet Jackson, man, talk about overcoming some really harsh circumstances. I that's another person who I just think like I have all the respect for because she had to work her ass off in a family where like all the boys were looked at and then, she's just the sister or whatever. I always thought she was really cool for I mean, I know they have more than one sister. But yeah, I just always thought she
Yeah,
was really cool.
she was another artist. I remember 'cause when I first started listening to music, I think she had put out like an album in 2001, and I was like, pretty aware of music like pop music and whatnot. And
Hmm.
I kind of saw her as like a seasoned veteran. Like I knew that she was Michael Jackson's little sister, and like, but I
Yeah.
felt that like she had like a Madonna like legacy. And
Yeah, I
so
agree.
so I really hate that that wardrobe malfunction for at least like probably a decade really put a damper on her legacy.
Yeah, agreed. I think there's so much more to her than, and like, I really couldn't tell you much about like her career since then, which is so sad because I feel like she probably is like so done with the limelight and just having, because I feel like, again, like you said, it's like, there's always this mar whenever somebody talks about Janet Jackson now, and it's like, well, let's talk about like the artist. Let's talk about how talented she is and
Yeah.
where she came from and all of that. But she doesn't get that because of this stupid incident.
But I think she at least has retained somewhat of a fan base because I think it was like I remember hearing like last year she sold out the State Farm Arena here in
Really?
Atlanta. Yeah. So I think she has retained at least, some sort of a fan base, or maybe people have gone back to her as like history has kind of been rewritten a little bit.
Good. That gives me some hope.
All right. Well, now we're gonna go from something. I guess I think you and I would consider this Janet Jackson situation somewhat, pretty sad. So we're gonna move on to something that's a little bit more humorous and lighthearted. Although it might enrage you to talk about. Number two, U2 gives people a free album and nobody's happy. In September of 2014, Irish rock band U2 had reigned as an iconic band for nearly 40 years. They had sold hundreds of millions of albums, dominated the charts in virtually every Western country, and had resided in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for nearly a decade. Also, their frontman, Paul Hewson, better known as Bono, had been regarded as a well-respected activist and philanthropist. So there was no way a small and generous gesture could significantly damage their legacy, right? Well, maybe wrong. Also happening in 2014, two important things were in decline. iTunes was in decline due to the growing popularity of streaming services such as Spotify. Also, U2 sort of was in decline as their most recent album, 2009's No Line on the Horizon, sold only half as many copies as its predecessor and lacked a single that matched the success of Vertigo, the lead single from that previous album, How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Thus, Apple, the company that owned iTunes, and U2 teamed up to develop what they deemed would be something mutually beneficial. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, agreed to pay U2 a set fee in exchange for the rights of their 2014 album, Songs of Innocence, for 5 weeks. During that time, they would put the album for free in the iTunes library of their 500 million subscribers. In addition, Apple was so serious about the idea that they invested $100 million to promote the project. Tim Cook felt so confident about the gesture, he chose not to give iTunes users the option of opting out of the free album. So on September 9th, 2014, while my cousin Jeremy was probably getting sloshed, celebrating his 21st birthday, shout out by the way, the plan went into effect. It initially appeared that the idea worked. Within its first week, the album received 33 million listens. However, once the dust from the stunt settled, it appeared that many of those listeners weren't exactly happy. Matt Jewell of Boston.com summed up the collective discontent, writing, quote, "Many users were in a frenzy because a piece of virtual space that's meant to be personal and private, i.e. an iPhones or an iPad storage system, was invaded by a corporate entity without anyone's consent." The album only peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 200, and not one single from Songs of Innocence even charted on the Billboard Hot 100. Rapper Tyler, the Creator, likened it to, quote, "waking up with a pimple or herpes." He went on to say, "Fuck Bono. I didn't ask for you. I'm mad." Canadian DJ Jacques Green sarcastically tweeted, quote, "Anyone know how I could have 12 recordings of myself farting appear in Bono's iTunes?" Bono later revealed that the idea was his, not anyone else in the band. He stated that it was essentially a classic example of the cliche "it seemed like a good idea at the time." He saw that music artists were losing revenue due to the increasing popularity of file sharing as well as streaming, and felt that having a big corporation give consumers free shit while paying the artists a large sum of money would serve as a good precedent. The frontman came to regret it, stating that while he thought he was doing something productively ambitious, it was in reality overreach. He wrote of the incident in his 2002 memoir, Surrender, commenting, quote, "On 9 September 2014, we didn't just put our bottle of milk at the door, but in every fridge in every house in town. In some cases, we poured it on the good people's cornflakes, and some people like to pour their own milk. and others are lactose intolerant. While people, including myself, were pretty pissed, folks eventually did what they should have done after the wardrobe malfunction and moved on. U2 still has over 21 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Their 2017 album Songs of Experience, which followed the 2014 debacle, peaked at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Also in 2017, the band was featured on the song Triple X from Kendrick Lamar's fourth studio album, Damn. While not a single, the song peaked at #3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and to date has nearly 265 million streams on Spotify. So, Ella, I know that you were excited for this one. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, you missed the part where every single day I get into my car and Raised by Wolves starts playing because I've been too lazy to take it out of my iTunes library for 10 years, apparently.
I feel like you're not the only person.
No, definitely not. But like, I know this as soon as you said, I was like, I can't tell you the name of that album, but I know when you say it, I'm gonna know. When you said Songs of Innocence, my like heart crumbled a little bit. I do love that. Let me just say, I love Bono and I love you too. I get it. I understand the idea, but it's just so stupid. Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like they're not my favorite band, but I like, there's some of their songs are like I still haven't found what I'm looking for. It's probably one of my favorite 80s songs.
Oh, it's so good.
You
Sunday
know,
Bloody Sunday.
Sunday,
Sunday.
right.
Yeah, there's some really good ones. And they're just like a cool band and
Yeah.
Bono seems great. And yeah, but yes, it's still literally what an overreach, what an overstep.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And so the again the $1 million question: where were you when U2 unsolicitedly put their album on your phone?
Well, okay, so this would have still been iPod times, I think. Like I think I still had an iPod, so I think I was still 2014 would have been I would have been in high school. So yeah, I think I was still rocking like an iPod mini or something.
You weren't in college by then?
No, I'm old for my class. 2014. Oh, wait, no. You're right. I was thinking I graduated in 2016. I graduated from college in 2016. Oh my God, I'm 1,000 years old. Okay. Yes. Yeah, it would have been my phone. Wow. Okay. So yeah. So no, I don't remember where I was, obviously, but I do remember it popping up like I think at that point I had gotten a car with like a cord, like up until this point I was driving a Volvo that was like up until college I drove a really really old like an 89 Volvo that had a CD player with a Dave Matthews Band CD in it all the time. But
That was a good
it
callback. That was a good
thank
callback.
you. Thank you. But yeah, my Volvo didn't have anything that I could like plug in to like play my phone, so it wasn't a nuisance in that sense until I got my little Hyundai Accent or whatever, and it had a cord. And then every single time I got in my car, it was like it was going through, and it's still, I mean, it still does. It goes. I don't use Apple Music. I've never been a big Apple Music person, but iTunes, like for a long time, I had most of my iTunes library on my phone. So yeah, just every single time.
Yeah. No, so I remember this is a moment where I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly what I was in. So I had just gotten back. I was it was when I was at New College, and we had in the parking lot we had what was called, princess parking. It was like the
Of
few
course.
spots that were in front of the apartments. If not, you had to be like a schleb and go, into the park in the parking lot. But so I got a princess parking spot, and I was so excited. I turned my car off and I like, looked at my phone to see if like I'd got any messages while I was driving. And then I was just like, I looked at my phone, I was like, huh, what is this? Why is there a new album on my phone? What is this? And I was just like, I remember thinking, because it was from iTunes, and I was like, did I buy a U2 album on iTunes? I was just like so confused. And then I got wind of it. And I was not happy because like at that time this was like, one of the first generations of iPhones that like didn't have that much storage on it. So I was like pretty close to reaching my maximum storage. So I was pretty pissed. And
Yeah, I believe it.
I was like, man, I fucking love you, Bono. How could you do this to me?
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really good point. Like the storage problem on iPhones. I mean, it's still not great, but at the time you were working with like what, like 12 gigs or something. And so
Something
like you
like
have
that,
like,
yeah.
yeah, so you put a whole album on there and it's like, okay, there goes half of my space. And it's like, I don't know, like maybe they should have like, well, I don't know what they shouldn't have done this at all, but maybe segmenting the population to people that like actually listen to U2 and then giving those like maybe their top, 100,000 listeners or something like that. Throw the album on their phones. But like I'm, 21-year-old college student. Like I don't want your album, Bono.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was I don't know for you like if this happened to you during college, but like we're a separate checks we do a cover of Sweater Weather by like what's it called, the Neighborhood or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were first doing it, we were talking about doing that song, and they all like knew it, like when I think it was Sarah that recommended, our singer, she recommended doing it, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, let's totally do it." And I raised my hand, I was like, "Guys, I've never heard that song before," and everyone was shocked, like, "How do you not know that song?" And I was just like, when did the song come out? And they told me I think it was like 2013 or something. And like, I don't know what it was, but I did not like, other than, like what got into like my friend group in college, like music around there. Like I never listened to the radio. Had no idea what was going on, like in terms of music. I
Mm-hmm.
was very like, again, now we're talking real peak pretentiousness with
Yeah, yeah.
music. So it's like like the most mainstream artist I was listening to was like Kendrick Lamar at that point. Other than
Mm-hmm.
that, it was just like some random fucking indie pop artist. Yeah, it was a weird
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But all that is to say that U2 was not something that I was actively listening to.
Yeah, fair
Uh,
enough, man. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing, right? Like, I don't think if you were under the age of 40, I don't think you were actively listening to U2. I mean, as much as actually, this is really funny. I'm just connecting these dots, but in 2014, I went on a backpacking trip in Europe with my friend Sarah, and we went to Dublin, and we went to like, we thought it was going to be, there's this museum in Dublin that apparently has a bunch of little miniatures, and it's really cool. And my friend Sarah's obsessed with miniatures. So we thought it'd be a really cool thing to do. And instead, we ended up at what's called the Mini Museum of Dublin. And it is like basically, think like, I don't know, Brooklyn brownstone filled with Irish, like memorabilia. That's what the vibe was in Dublin. It's tiny too, like a really skinny brownstone. Just every room has a different theme. And there was one room, the biggest room in this little place, was just filled with U2 memorabilia. And this would have been 3 months after they put
oh
that damn
no.
album on my.
You must have been so triggered.
I guess I was. I don't remember. I don't remember being like, and fuck you, and fuck this cardboard cutout of Bono. Like, I don't remember that, but I probably was.
You must have been like, all right, this is U2's country. I need to behave. I need to
Yeah.
behave. And then you just yell, fuck you, Bono.
Yeah, fuck you, Bono. That seems like a really good way to get
Yeah.
like kicked out of the country immediately. He's like their saint, their new
Yeah.
Saint Patrick.
And it's funny that they're like the nicest guys. Like,
Oh, I know, and they're all
yeah,
best friends. Like, aren't they like
yeah,
high school friends or
yeah.
something? Like,
They've been together since like the mid 70s. And
yeah, just
like,
good
yeah,
people just did something really
yeah,
dumb.
yeah. It's like, it's a life lesson. If you're gonna give someone free shit, just make sure they want it,
Make
you
sure
know?
they want it. That's a great, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, when you get birthday gifts and like you don't like it and you're just like, oh, that's so nice. Then you go, put it down and you never touch it again.
Yeah, but
Um,
you couldn't return this one as easily,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. And it wasn't a birthday gift. It was a fucking random Tuesday. So,
Yeah. It was a birthday gift for
yeah,
Jeremy, right?
exactly. Yeah. This is all Jeremy's fault.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
that's who takes the blame
Yeah.
here.
Um, Shout out. He gets another shout out. That's exciting.
Yeah, man.
Anyways, so number one, Ella, this is the moment that you've been waiting for. And this is why you're here, is to talk about number one. Kanye takes the mic from Taylor.
Mm.
In September of 2009, Kanye West and Taylor Swift were two of the top names in music. West had been in the mainstream for nearly a decade, gaining recognition as a producer for Jay-Z on his legendary album, The Blueprint. He then exploded with a critically and commercially successful rap solo career. Swift, more than a decade younger than West, was a relative newcomer on the scene. At the time, she was a 19-year-old pop country star whose album Fearless hit number one in the US and went on to sell 12 million copies worldwide, pretty remarkable considering the presence of illegal downloading at the time. On September 13th, as the red carpet was laid down at the Radio City Music Hall in New York for the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards, West was seen holding a bottle of Hennessy, whose amount of liquor gradually got smaller and smaller. West had been nominated for multiple awards and thus was seated in the front row. According to Vox, Swift arrived at the award ceremony without a drink in hand, but in a glass pumpkin shaped Cinderella coach wearing a quote unquote glittering silver gown. She was there for two reasons. Reason number one, she was there to perform her hit single, You Belong With Me. Reason number two, the song she was there to perform had been nominated for Best Video by a female artist. The other nominees were Pink, Katy Perry, Kelly Clarkson, Lady Gaga, and Beyonce. Beyonce had been nominated for her video of Single Ladies, in parentheses, Put a Ring on It. When it came time to reveal the winner of the award, Twilight star Taylor Lautner and Latin pop singer Shakira presented the award to the winner, Taylor Swift. The 19-year-old singer looked genuinely humbled and ecstatic upon winning the trophy. In the midst of giving a typical speech one would give after earning such an award, Kanye West, unfortunately in close proximity, approached the stage. He took the microphone from Swift and infamously uttered the words, quote, "Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time." As soon as West invoked Beyonce's name, the camera turned to her and she looked absolutely mortified and apparently mouthed the words, "Oh, Kanye," though to me it looked like she just said, "Oh my God." After his statement, West shrugged his shoulders, handed back the microphone to Swift, who was visibly shaken and left speechless, and then proceeded to give the audience the middle finger. The audience erupted into boos for Kanye, but then in a moment of solidarity transitioned into loud applause for Swift. When Kanye returned to his seat, he was intensely scolded by Pink before being kicked out by MTV. Backstage, both Swift and Beyonce were in tears. The producers of the program were in a bit of a panic. They wanted to console the singers, but also Swift was set to perform very shortly. Swift, to her credit, was able to compose herself for her performance. Later in the evening, Beyonce won the award for Best Video. But instead of making an acceptance speech, she said, quote, "I'd like to give Taylor her moment." And Swift finished her speech that had been rudely interrupted. Kanye posted an apology following the event, but the damage was done and the backlash began. Twitter, which was young at the time, became the forum where people were able to air their grievances of Kanye West's behavior. Katy Perry tweeted in all caps, "Fuck you, Kanye. It's like you stepped on a kitten." Pink tweeted, "Kanye West is the biggest piece of shit on earth. Quote me." Kelly Clarkson wrote on her blog, "What happened to you as a child? Did you not get hugged enough?" President Barack Obama called Kanye West a jackass, and future President Donald Trump called for a boycott of his music. Now, of course, the story doesn't stop there. Taylor Swift went on to become the biggest pop star on the face of the planet, garnering popularity with the likes of the biggest artists ever, such as the Beatles, Michael Jackson, and Elvis. While I'm not going to talk about the horrendous person that Kanye has been post 2015, he did bounce back in 2010 and 2013 with two of my favorite albums of all time, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Yeezus, respectively. So for a brief time, it was water under the bridge. So Ella, I purposely left out a lot of the aftermath of the incident and the subsequent feud between Taylor and Kanye, but do you want to speak to any of that, or you just want to stick to the VMAs?
Well, I think it's really interesting. First of all, great shout out with the Barack thing. That hot mic. Oh my God. That's one of my favorite presidential moments of all time. Kanye West is a jackass.
Oh.
Amazing. Yeah, I thought as far as like the actual moment goes, like he is a jackass. What a terrible thing to do to a 19-year-old girl. Like I wouldn't, even if I was a 19-year-old girl, I wouldn't go up and be like, "Hang on, other 19-year-old girl, fuck you, but Beyonce's better." However, I do think it gave us one of the most like poignant and like maybe not one of the most, but like just a really poignant women supporting women moment with Beyonce being like, "Actually, just this guy's an idiot. Let me get Taylor up here so she can have her moment." Like I just thought that was such a class act thing to do. I think Beyonce's such a girl's girl, and that's just like that was rad. I really liked that part of it. I didn't know that Pink scolded Kanye, but that makes me very happy.
Yeah, apparently it was like really intense. Like
Hell yeah.
she got real in his face, and yeah.
Good.
And
That's great.
and she like since I started like when she became popular in the early 2000s, she just came up to me. She's like, that is a tough cookie right there. I would not want to
Yeah.
cross her."
Yeah, she scares me, but in a good way.
Yeah,
Yes, that's good to know. I'm glad. It sounds like all of the women in the room were like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
yeah.
Like, dude, Especially because like I'm just thinking about if I was a 19-year-old girl standing up in front of all those women or all those people in general, like I just cannot even imagine. I would immediately start crying. And one thing about that moment is that Taylor Lautner was dating Taylor Swift at the time. So her boyfriend's on stage behind her while this is happening. Like I can't even
Yeah.
imagine.
So, so not I was just when I was researching this, I found out that Taylor Lautner, because like people were kind of like attacking him. Maybe that's why they were attacking him for not doing anything.
Well, they
Um,
were they were dating at the time, or maybe they were
yeah,
about to start. No, they were because You Belong With Me was from, or she, it kind of came out alongside that movie Valentine's Day, I think, which they're in together and they're like dating in the movie and they're dating in real life too.
gotcha. But apparently he said that he couldn't hear what
Yeah,
Kanye said. So he thought it was like some like stunt that was prepared.
yeah, I've seen that interview and I felt bad for him. I don't think he should have done anything, but I
Yeah.
just am thinking about it from like the girl perspective where you're like,
Yeah.
this is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me, and my very famous boyfriend is right behind me while it's
Yeah.
happening. Like I hate everything about this.
Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
also in like the part of Taylor Swift's career where she was like she was far less outspoken. She was just like this really sweet like country singer that like wrote really nice like story like that like really nice stories.
Yeah,
You
really
know,
nice like little story
yeah,
songs and stuff.
there was nothing controversial about her. There's nothing bad you could say about her. She was just like a nice, talented like teenager that was, that was connecting with the youth. You know what I mean? And really everybody.
Yeah.
So it was just like I really think that there's like no way that you couldn't feel for Taylor at the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, okay, do I think that it's something that we should still be harping on, 10, how long ago was that? 2010?
2009,
2009.
like
Okay.
15 years ago.
15 years ago. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that we should still be like, pointing to as like well, maybe she did this wrong, but she did get treated poorly at the VMAs at one time. But I do think that it's like, what a way to get launched into the international conversation. You know what I mean? Like as like
Yeah.
a victim, basically. And it's like, and then to speak to like the aftermath a little bit, or not the aftermath, but like the reverberations throughout her career, just like the Famous music video. I think about this all the time. Kanye releases Famous. This is like that whole
Yeah. From Life of Pablo.
video.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like that whole scandal with Taylor saying she didn't hear about it
Yeah.
beforehand or whatever. I couldn't care less about all of that. What really bothered me about it all is that he put a lookalike of Taylor nude in his music video with a bunch of other lookalikes nude. I just think like that's some kind of like revenge porn situation that's like it
Yeah.
toes the line, obviously, because it's not her, but it's still like I can't even imagine someone using your image in that way and just like and to just be consistently reminded of this, traumatic event that launched her into maybe that moment did make her famous. I think she was bound to be famous either way, but that did launch her into, the national media and like international media. Like to just be consistently reminded of that throughout your career, like of course that's going to have a lasting effect on you. And just like, even if she is over it now, even if she is like, yeah, that happened to me, whatever, I'm over it. Like he continued to disrespect her throughout the rest of her career in the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. And I think that really like that kind of was eye-opening for me, like to see how mean-spirited he was. And obviously, and I never like it was one of those things that for the longest, and we'll talk about him more in a second, but for the longest time, like I just kind of thought, okay, Kanye is just kind of like a douche, kind of like John Mayer is a douche, but it's like, he's super talented, it's fine, it's harmless. Um,
Hmm.
but kind of I never knew that about because again, that came out in college, so I was not
Yeah,
like I didn't
it wasn't the
I had
Shins, so you
yeah.
weren't listening to it.
Exactly. I had like I heard the song and I remember like so when I heard Famous, you remember my friend Dylan, like
Mhm.
I was like we were talking about it and he's like, "Oh, do you listen to Life of Pablo?" I was like, "Yeah, I listen to Famous, but I didn't like what he said about." And again, I'm like, I'm not a Taylor Swift fan and nor was I at the time, but I was like, I really didn't like that he said that like I made that bitch famous. Like I thought that was really mean-spirited and problematic.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh no, no, no!" Like they talked about it beforehand, and it was like she cleared it. And like I was like, "Oh, okay." And I moved on with my life, and then finding out years later it was not quite that case. Um, so all of that to say is that yeah, Kanye just like over the years, I think just really kept building up his mean spirit and now obviously he's just like an unhinged basket case. But
Yeah. Yeah, I do think like I mean, obviously if you're looking at that incident and kind of extrapolating where all those people are now, like Beyonce came out on top. Well, Taylor came out on top, but Beyonce's you, not a mar on her from that whole interaction. Like there's been so many like recalls to that moment in Taylor's career, and people say she harps on it too much, and people, obviously hold ire towards Kanye for it and everything, but Beyonce comes out looking like an absolute queen. And I think that's the moral of the story is like, don't let jackasses try and speak for you.
PSA kids,
Yeah, yeah, you heard it here.
from Ella Hyder, don't let jackasses speak for you.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like another she's queen bee for a reason, um
Yeah.
but so we didn't even get to like the main question. Where were you when Kanye took the mic from Taylor?
Well, I honestly don't remember, but I do remember I used to watch like the Snapchat stories that were like the pop culture ones. I don't know if you remember that. They might still have them, I'm not sure, but like you could like swipe to stories and you could watch just like this pop culture chat or whatever, and it would just go for like 5 minutes or whatever. And I do remember being sitting in my room in the scholarship house in I guess it was mm, this would have been years later whenever the videos came out of Kanye on the phone with Taylor. And I do remember actually watching those on Kim's Snapchat story, Kim Kardashian's Snapchat story. So that was crazy. And I remember where I was when I heard that Barack said that Kanye was a jackass. So I don't remember where I was when it actually happened, but I do remember seeing it everywhere, of course, like, on all MTV, all the channels. And then I remember hearing that Barack was on a hot mic saying Kanye West was a jackass. And I was like, I will vote for that man until I die.
uh yeah, if you call Kanye a jackass, you're in good standing with Ella, especially if
Yeah.
you're a politician.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
but yeah, because that happened, it happened all pretty quickly. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
like 2 days after Barack Obama got caught on the hot mic. But it was definitely
No, I
like,
thought this was before. Wait, didn't he say? I thought he said that in reference to Kanye on stage, didn't he?
yeah, 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 that was a couple days after.
Oh, got it,
Yeah,
got
yeah,
it. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
But so yeah, for me, where I was in my room on my computer on Facebook. I wasn't watching the VMAs again because I was too cool,
Of course, of
pretentious.
course.
And like like literally everybody's Facebook status was about like, I can't believe Kanye did that. What an asshole, et cetera, et cetera. And I like, turned it on to watch it. I don't even remember if they were like still showing like, replays of it, replays.
Yeah, it's like slow mo.
Yeah. But obviously like the next day it was on the news everywhere.
It was
And
everywhere.
it
Yeah.
was it was everywhere. And it was one of those things that literally everyone was talking about. Like my mom, who probably didn't know who either was before, the word show was talking about it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, my teachers, everyone. So it was and then obviously, I guess that was maybe that was a start of memes, because then first, so you would
I'm
see
gonna let you
memes.
finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was everywhere. And you're right.
Yeah.
You mentioned Twitter, and I think that is one of the first moments that you kind of like experienced via Twitter, right? Like I mean, that was like I got a Twitter in 2009. So like that would have been one of the first things where I saw all my people having a reaction to it at one time, anyone I followed talking about it all at one time. And that was kind of the start of like that whole craze of like, oh, everybody's got an opinion on this thing that happened. And it's not just like my friends on Facebook, but it's these celebrities that I follow as well. And you can kind of see everybody in real time reacting to it. And people are posting the videos and people are posting memes and stuff like that. And it's just kind of like this whole cultural moment as opposed to like the Janet Jackson thing where like it happens, there's backlash to it the next day, 24-hour news cycle. This is like a, 2-minute news cycle.
Right. And it like totally takes a life of its own. Maybe that's why the paparazzi kind of dwindled a little bit after that, is because with Twitter, people were starting to interact with their like favorite celebrities, and it's like, oh, wait, they can say things. They're a
Yeah,
person.
yeah. They have opinions and thoughts.
Yeah. Um But I love my favorite was so. What was your favorite of those quotes that I mentioned between Katy Perry, Pink, and Kelly Clarkson?
Ooh, well, the Katy Perry one is really
Yeah.
funny for all of its later implications because I think like the next year is when their feud started. Whenever
Oh,
like
Katy
Taylor
Perry.
and
Oh, Taylor and Katy Perry had a feud. I didn't know that.
oh Dove, oh my God, this is like lore of epic proportions. You have to do some. I'll send you some literature on
So,
it.
this is why you're officially the pop culture correspondent for Hotcakes from 90 Stan,
Oh my
Ella.
God, I'm
So
honored. I'm honored. If it happened in the last 20 years, I know about it. But yeah, they have like a huge feud where Taylor Swift claims that Katy Perry tried to, I guess it probably was a few years later because Bad Blood is about Katy Perry.
oh, is
Taylor's
it?
song Bad Blood, yes. And she claims that Katy tried to like swipe some of her dancers out from under her when she was preparing for a tour. And that was like, there's this quote from Taylor Swift, like there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And that's been thrown back in her face with like all of the Olivia Rodrigo stuff that's happened later on. But either way, she claimed that Katy was trying to ruin her tour. And so she wrote Bad Blood and basically just like went off. And Katy Perry tweeted, like, beware of the Regina George in sheep's clothing or something. So the fact that she referred to her as a kitten is so funny. Like she just has this
Yeah.
like Katy Perry just it's funny seeing her opinion of Taylor evolve.
Yeah, Katy Perry, another How I Met Your Mother guest star.
Oh my gosh, she's Honey. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, Honey.
Oh, honey. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. No, I had no idea that was Bad Blood was about Katy Perry. Checks
Oh
out.
yeah. Yeah,
But
it's
I
a
just love
big
the Regina George in sheep's clothing. That's intense.
I know. Yeah, it was bad for a while until Katy Perry in when Taylor was doing maybe her Reputation tour, Katy sent her a literal olive branch and like left it like had one delivered to her dressing room.
Okay. That's a move.
Well, it's an olive branch, extending an olive branch,
Yeah.
Like it's yeah,
Yeah.
so she like and it was just something like good luck with your tour,
Yeah.
like kind of like let's let bygones be bygones.
Yeah, no, no. I just think it's like it's an interesting gesture when you could have just like, give a text message. But it's all
Yeah.
good. We
Oh, it
love the
was
symbolism.
Lover. It was the Lover tour
Yeah.
because Katy Perry's in the You Need to Calm Down music video.
Oh, she is.
Hmm.
And that's the one where it's like a barbershop quartet, right? Do do do
Um,
do 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 do. You need to
yeah,
calm
you need to
down.
calm
Yeah,
down. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, we finally did it, Ella. I finally spent a good chunk of my podcast talking about Taylor Swift.
Finally.
And of course, you're the one that, facilitated it. But yeah, Ella, as always, you did a fantastic job. We love having you here, and we can't wait for the next episode that you will join us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, best of luck. Give Waylon a big hug, and
Oh,
give Nick not as big of a hug
I
for
always
me.
do.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye, Dub.
Thanks, y'all, so much for listening. And of course, a special thanks to our pop culture queen, Ella Hyder, for crushing it as per usual. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and whatever it brings, hopefully music is involved. Again, I'm Dub Brenner, and this is Hotcakes from a 90s Stand. Take care.